Time now for the basketball show. Taylor Corn, Jim Dunaway here with you again. Little T on, we record these on Sundays, available on Monday mornings to go into another week. Different week this week. I don't know why we do it this way, but Auburn has a bye. Eventually, Alabama will have a bye in the middle of the week. Let's just keep playing, man. Let's just keep playing. Auburn's hot right now, and Alabama's hot right now. No need to have byes, right?
I mean, I'm fine with it due to the health concerns that we're having in Auburn, but it is kind of weird. I don't think the team's complaining about it, though.
Yeah, me either. So we're getting ready for game day being at Auburn coming up Saturday. You'll be there for that. We do have at one time snow in the forecast for these midweek games, but at least around here, it seems like that's backed off. Wait and see how that plays on Tuesday. But Alabama's at home to Vandy on Tuesday. Then they're at home to LSU on Saturday. It'll be another fun Saturday where Alabama and Auburn will play exactly at the same time. So we'll do a post-game show after both of those, but the one on Saturday will be at the conclusion of the last game. And Taylor will talk about Auburn because she wouldn't see Alabama, and I'll talk about Alabama because I couldn't see Auburn, and it'll be a lot of fun. But this edition, Little T, is always a mailbag with a twist tonight because you also went in to talk to some Arkansas fans tonight. So let's start with that. I guess that was a little fun subject. David R. 1983 wrote in on our mailbag this week. This is from Twitter. Has the game passed John Calipari by? Arkansas winless right now in the SEC and not trending well. Meanwhile, things are pretty good at Kentucky. Give me your initial thoughts on has the game passed Calipari by, and then we'll get some responses, instant reaction from the Arkansas fans.
Yeah, I think that this, in my opinion, this was one of those hires where he's obviously a massive name in college basketball. He's a name that everyone knows, whether you follow the sport closely or not. Everyone knows who John Calipari is. And it might be, his time might be, his best might be in the past. I don't think that any Arkansas fans expected to start conference play 0-5. And they have all the money in the world. You would think those Tyson chicken nuggets can get any player that Calipari wants to Arkansas in Fayetteville. But they have been struggling, and I think that the success, like you said, Kentucky, yes, they just lost on Saturday, but they lost to a really, really good Alabama team. So the success that they're seeing Kentucky have now that Mark Pope has taken over, now that Calipari's gone, has got to make it sting a little bit more. And the Kentucky fans weren't sad to see Cal go, which I think is a little bit of a red flag.
That old dribble drive offense seems antiquated now. It used to be a really cool thing. And now the way everybody does analytics and shoots threes and the way they play it in Lexington or Tuscaloosa or Auburn, it does make him seem a little old. When he was at Kentucky, and we knew he had success at Memphis as well to the national championship game at UMass, but at Kentucky, Elite Eight, Final Four, national championship, NIT, Final Four out in the second round, Elite Eight, Sweet 16, Elite Eight, missed the tournament, or actually no tournament because of COVID. COVID broke Calipari because after that, no tournament because of COVID, out in the first round, out in the second round, out in the first round, and he's at Arkansas. So pre-COVID, he was good. Post-COVID, no tournament, out in the first round, out in the second round, out in the first round. Forget Kentucky standards. That's not Alabama and Auburn standards anymore. That's not Florida standards. That's not Tennessee standards. So I understand why the Kentucky folks are happy he's gone, and they're happy they got one of their own home. How are Arkansas fans feeling right now? Because they had slipped down, I think, to their proud tradition of a little bit of irrelevance in the league a little bit. And then they bring in the big guy in Calipari, and they wake up the Tyson chicken guys who start giving them all the money.
Right.
But are they happy?
No. I don't know how you could be either. No matter who your coach is, it's in the SEC now, people are expecting to win. I mean, it's the best league in college basketball right now. Everyone wants to be competitive. And when you're seeing everyone else in your league, nonetheless, the program that your coach just left having success, but everyone else in the league having success, all of these teams are being talked about in such a bright light. No, someone I tried to start up a conversation on Twitter about it because I wanted to hear what Arkansas fans were thinking. And one of the replies was, as a friend of a Kentucky fan, they're laughing right now at Arkansas. So you almost wonder, if this is kind of what they expected. They're like, okay, y'all are all excited right now because this was a huge deal when the
Right.
news broke. I remember all of the live streams during his introductory press conference, the arena slap full. It seemed like it revitalized, the energy in Arkansas, and it has not come to fruition. And there was one thing that just popped to mind. I cannot remember what game it was at, but it was after some post-game press conference. He was asked a question, and in his response, he said something along the lines of, I mean, who do we even play next? When do we play again? And it seemed like it was some sort of front. It was almost like he was trying to play some sort of character, but I'm like, that's not a great look. Whether you're saying it seriously or not, that's probably not something that you want to give media members access to pulling, clipping, putting on the internet, and twisting into whatever narrative they want to twist it into.
Bussin' for OG, whose byline includes Hogs by 90, says this team is ass. Not happy with what Calipari is doing there. Charcuterie, who's an Alabama fan, says he's cashed that Walmart check and that card has now been declined. Time for him to go off to a beach somewhere. Let's see, Tahoe College football. A clown could easily be 11-7 coaching Arkansas right now with that schedule. And it points it out, tags Kentucky Sports Radio and Pat Forty in that, who have had great, or I should say big things, not great things to say about Calipari. So that's the response there on Calipari. They are struggling. And, oh, by the way, in the SEC this week, all they get is Georgia at home, who's lost 2 straight. So that's a really good Georgia team, desperate for a win. And then on the weekend, all they do is, do they have the weekend off?
They have Oklahoma.
Oklahoma on the weekend.
And then Kentucky. And then they go to Kentucky, which is going to be a bloodbath.
Yeah. Could be 0-7, and he's at Rupp Arena walking in with, you would think for what he did, a national championship, that maybe they would be nice, but there may be some boos that come raining down. So interesting on the question from David about Calipari. Let's do a couple of injury updates, and then we'll get into some Auburn and Alabama stuff. Let's go first, Johni Broome, because I know a couple of people posting about Johni Broome. Little extra time to rest. From what you were hearing in practice this week, was Johni, it never seemed like they were planning on him coming back. Tennessee at the earliest. Now Tennessee's the next game, and it's still a week away. What are you hearing on Johni Broome?
He did not practice. The last time that Bruce Pearl spoke to the media prior to his post-game press conference on Saturday afternoon, Johni was not practicing. But like you said, I don't think that they were ever planning on playing him in the Georgia game or the Mississippi State game, obviously. With this is the earliest, the Tennessee game is the earliest that I've heard word of him potentially coming back. I've not heard anything definitive. But in terms of a timeline, which the university, Bruce, when he's speaking to the media, has been very vague and really hasn't said anything about it. But what I've heard is that Tennessee was the earliest probable game, and them having, I guess a bye this week, no midweek game on Tuesday or Wednesday, I think definitely helps. But this is something that we touched on yesterday during the post-game show. He has been in both games, in the Mississippi State game and the Georgia game. He has been up on his feet and so active on the sideline or on the bench. So that makes me believe that his pain can't be that bad, because if he was in excruciating pain, one, he would probably be on crutches or in one of those little scooter things. And two, he wouldn't want to be up on his feet, jumping around, walking to the huddle at every break. So that makes me feel like his pain has to be under control, at least a little bit.
That protective boot there does its job to make sure nobody steps on it or anything like that. Usually it is not part of the rehab process. It's there just to protect it from people stepping on it or him to roll it or anything like that. I think, Tennessee was always the earliest date for me as well. It times out work perfectly. Game day will be there, and you're 2-0. So you've been
Yeah.
2-0 through this, so no harm, no foul, in my opinion, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And a question that I have for you, which this is, I guess, a little bit of a hypothetical, but let's say he's 85% or 90%. He feels confident that he can play. He might have a little soreness, but he feels like he can go. With them being 2-0 without him, it hasn't, especially the Georgia win, not pretty. Do you play him? Because my concern, if I was the coaching staff, and they obviously have a lot more information from team doctors, all of their athletic training people, but how big of a risk is it? Because you tweak an ankle, you make one wrong step or roll it a little bit, that can set you back further than you were initially than you were right after, the injury that happened during the South Carolina game. So I just wonder how much, they'll think about that if you sit him a little bit longer out of preventative reasons just to be cautious. Because in the back of their mind somewhere there has to be, I think that Cooper Flagg, the National Player of the Year conversation, I think that Cooper Flagg wins at this point, barring injury, like assuming that Cooper Flagg stays healthy for the rest of the season. But that he's a competitor. He wants to be back out on the court. So I just wonder how they're weighing all the pros and cons of this, especially like you said, with them being 2-0 without him and they're coming back home.
Yeah, I would trust the doctors.
Right.
And I personally wouldn't put him back in until he's 100%. I'd protect him because you're
Yeah.
right. I don't think even if he comes back, player of the year discussion seems like it's going to be Cooper Flagg and Johni probably finishing second in that voting, barring, Cooper could get injured or maybe he hits a freshman slump. Johni's a veteran and that could flip things back around. The thing that may be on the line the most this weekend is number one overall seed in the country when we get to the NCAA tournament. Because right now that's Auburn, but Tennessee is also a number one seed in the latest Joe Lunardi bracketology. So you're saying to yourself, how important is this game really? Auburn's got a game up on them 2 now in the SEC race because Tennessee just dropped 1 to Vanderbilt. Tennessee's not going to be on that one line anymore when Lunardi's next bracketology comes out because they just lost on the road to Vandy. So to me, there's not a whole lot on the line other than game day being in town.
Right.
And Tennessee is a really, really good basketball team. To me, it's 100%. He's good to go. And then you can't play hurt the rest of the way. You can't be scared the rest of the way. You got to be like, okay, you're 100%. Let's go. If you're 95, if you're 90, you're 85, I'm resting him right now. It's too early. You want him to be back at 100% at some point. That's Johni Broome. Game day at Neville this weekend. Tennessee Auburn 7:30. Of course, game days in the morning, so you'll be able to split the day up. Little T. Hopefully, you get someplace to hang out down at Auburn. Yeah,
early morning and then a late night.
Yeah, other than Byron's barbecue, which you always love to sneak by, right? Will you do that on Saturday?
I haven't mapped my day out yet. I always try to when I'm there, if I can get there for breakfast. Always try to. I'm gonna have to see what time I plan on getting to the arena for game day. So TBD, but I hope so.
So you go Byron's breakfast, so you wouldn't go Byron's lunch in that situation? Like go to game day?
Sausage biscuit.
Oh, that's what hits home for you there.
Yep.
I got it. Next time I'm down there, yeah, you got to buy me one of those. I'll let you buy on that one. On Derrion Reid, which was the other question we had injury wise, OC Jim writes in, what's Derrion Reid's status? He missed his second straight game for Alabama. Listen, he's not a starter, but he's a McDonald's All-American. He's a big part of what Alabama does. Lower body injury, still that lower leg injury. He's missed 2 straight games. He was practicing. He just wasn't a full go in the 5-on-5 before they left for Kentucky. So they shut him down for one more game. So if he's practicing and just not a full go in the 5-on-5, that means he is a game time decision every week. We'll see if he's back for Vandy, Alabama on Tuesday. If not, he's going to be back sooner rather than later. One more question on my sheet over here, and then I'll let you take it the rest of the way. This is the basketball show brought to you by mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag. Hopefully you're catching this on a Monday morning or a Tuesday morning before the games happen on Tuesday night. You can play the games, promo code next round at mybookie.ag. And also our friends at roback.com, promo code TNR20, get you 20% off great golf gear, great hoodies, great active wear for the lady in your life as well. Parquet Palace 205 says, is Mark Sears better than he was this time last year? We tackled this sort of a couple of episodes ago, but Nate Oates went off a little deeper into this with the guys from Field of 68 After Dark last night. So I'm going to answer this by saying, yes, he is. And here's what Nate Oates says. So I'll just let Nate answer this, and I want your thoughts on this. The scoring, we've already told you that he's got more 20-point games than he had at this point last year. But Nate Oates says his defense is better and that he's distributing the basketball better than he did last year. He tells the Field of 68 guys, Taylor, that because he knows he's the focal point of everyone's game plan, his penetration and then kicking it out to easier shots like Grant Nelson, who I think's benefited a lot from his success. I'd say Mark Sears is better, not just in points, but like Nate says, with defense and distribution. You got a thought on Mark Sears?
Yeah, and going off that, Nate said that was one of the main reasons that he came back when he went to get feedback from scouts in terms of going to the NBA, declaring for the draft after last season, because his stock was so high. I mean, he led his team to the Final Four, something that Alabama had never done. And Nate Oates said he came back because he needed to get better defensively, and he's been busting his butt to do that because he was told that's what he needed to do. And he has so many weapons this season. He has so many guys that can hit shots. He's averaging more assists per game, almost 2, I believe, more assists per game than he was at this point through 18 games last season. And I think, and I've said this a couple times on here before, so if you've heard this before, I'm sorry to be repetitive, but this, I believe, we feel like the people that feel like, why isn't Mark Sears being talked about being talked about so much? He was being talked about so much at the end of last season because of, like we said, Alabama was making history and he was leading the run. He was leading the run in March. And this season, there are so many other guys that are being talked about. You know, it's Mark Sears plus X, Y, and Z. So he's not the sole guy in the spotlight as he was a lot of the time last season. He was the Alabama player being talked about consistently last year, and now he's sharing the spotlight. So I think that might be the reason that people feel like, okay, why isn't he being talked about so much? That's my opinion.
Grant Nelson is having a monster season as well, benefiting from Mark there, so that's a good point. The team success is good coming off that big win at Kentucky. They're at home for a couple of games this week, including Tuesday with Vandy. All right, more mailbag from Little T over there. What do you have for us, Little T?
All right, one of my favorite Auburn players right now, Tahaad Pettiford, primetime Pettiford. Bailey asked, how did Northeast programs like St. John's, Seton Hall, UConn let Auburn get Tahaad? Because he is from New Jersey, for those of you who might not know.
Sometimes, UConn, people like that, they can't see the trees for the forest because they're winning back-to-back national championships and they're looking nationally or internationally. Maybe they missed him. Seton Hall makes no sense, or anybody else up there. But truthfully, if you had a choice between Seton Hall and Auburn or anybody else up there in Auburn, if it's not UConn, I don't think it's close. You come to Auburn, right? UConn, you probably have a discussion at that point, but everyone else up there, not even close. I'm taking Auburn 100 times.
Yeah, especially with the success they've had over the past few seasons. And his final two that he was deciding between when he announced his commitment were UConn and Auburn. So UConn was in the race late. I believe his dad and Dan Hurley are friends also. But I found a quote from when he committed, because I was like, maybe Tahaad can answer this question for Bailey. And he said, when asked, this was after his commitment, he did an interview with 24/7 Sports. And he said, it felt like another home. BP, it's a great organization. Bruce Pearl, it's a great organization. I knew a couple players were coming back. It's a winning organization, and I came to win. Something else that I'm sure went into play when he was making his decision is the guys that were coming back, they needed a shooter coming back. They had Trey left, Aiden left. Denver has been playing really, really well this season. But the guys that were coming back with a lot of success that he knew would probably spend a lot of time on the court, Johni, Dylan, They needed a Tahaad Pettiford badly because their guard play over the past, I mean, for a hot second, has been the weakness of Auburn's team. They have not had consistent guards that can shoot the ball.
Yeah, that shooting guard that could really take the top off of a defense. And let's factor in two other things. I watched 2 NFL playoff games in the icy cold of the Northeast. Weather's better in Auburn, and I hate to say it, but the women are better looking in the South than they are in the North. They just are. We have more sunshine. We're able to be outside more. They're just better looking. That's a win-win-win for Tahaad Pettiford to be down here in SEC country. Check, check, check.
I'm sure that played a very large role in Tahaad Pettiford's decision. Kennan asked, is Chad going to get his usual efficiency back? And I'm sure this is coming off. I posted the request for mailbag questions after this morning, so after the games yesterday, and Chad didn't have his best game yesterday. I mean, he started slow. The first half, not great. He hit a couple massive shots that were spark plugs for the energy of Auburn's offense at the start of the second half. But he hasn't, I mean, the game before, the Tuesday night game, he had 20 points. I believe that was his season high too. So I think it was just in my opinion, the first half of the Georgia game was just an off game for him, and that happens.
He did have an 8-0 personal run, though, and one stretch of the basketball game. And I would tell you, yesterday was, of the 2 games, yesterday was that moment where you thought to yourself, okay, they're missing Johni Broome a little bit here.
Yeah.
And what happens in that situation is somebody like Chad Baker-Mazara is like, okay, we're missing Johni right now. I need to step up. I'm a team leader. And maybe you start pressing. You try to do too much. And that looked like that was happening for Chaney a little bit yesterday. Looked like it was happening for Chad Baker-Mazara a little bit yesterday. It was a survive and advance moment. I said this yesterday, back on Saturday after the win for Auburn. They've got all the quad 1 wins they need. Just go win basketball games, win the regular season, and you're going to be the number 1 overall seed. Nothing to prove. Doesn't matter how bad you beat these teams. Just beat these teams, and you win. It was ugly at South Carolina, but you won the game. It was ugly at Georgia, but you won the basketball game. And they gave them 3 shots in the final 0.6 seconds to try to beat them. You still beat them. So I'm not worried about Chad Baker-Mazara. Maybe pressing a little bit, but when his mate gets back in Johni Broome, I think he'll be fine.
Which maybe will be Saturday. I'm very interested to see what Bruce works, because I mean, Bruce is going to be asked about it every press conference until Johni returns. So I am interested to see if he practices this week.
Yeah. And you also wonder about the gamemanship, if Bruce will try to downplay it. But if you're Rick Barnes, I think you've got to prepare.
Yes.
First of all, they do have a midweek game. They play on Tuesday night at home against Mississippi State. Tough game. They got a game plan for them. So when they flip on Wednesday and start game planning for the trip to Auburn, if you're Rick Barnes, you got to just assume Johni is going to play. You prepare for Johni Broome, and if Johni doesn't play, they don't do things that much differently. So there's no need for the mind games. You prepare for Johni Broome. If Johni's out there, you prepare for Chaney Johnson too. It worked out fine.
Yeah, I agree. I'm very interested to hear what you have to say. This is something that's been talked about a lot over the past probably 4 or 5 years, especially. Riley said, what's your take on Alabama and Auburn as a whole in terms of being 2 of the best in the SEC? And I'm very intrigued to hear your answer to this question, because for as long as anyone can remember, the state of Alabama has lived, breathed college football. It has been college football country in the state of Alabama.
Yeah, my whole life it's Kentucky, Kentucky, Kentucky. And I'll challenge you guys to go Wikipedia as you watch this and look at the list of SEC champions, regular season and tournament champions, and just see how many times Kentucky comes in there. I think Kentucky actually is in there more than Alabama football is over the years, just to use your comparison there. Yeah,
well, I guess that probably wouldn't be that surprising.
Yeah, Alabama football SEC champions, Kentucky dominates the league. And at one point, it was almost like they were embarrassed to be in the SEC at times because they dominated it so much. It was Kentucky and everybody else. Like Alabama is the second winningest program in SEC basketball history from the beginning of SEC basketball. And there's just a huge gap between Kentucky and Alabama. So when Auburn went to the Final Four, it started when Bruce took the job at Auburn. So that changed Auburn. And when Auburn went to the Final Four, I think that once again got Alabama back to saying we need to invest in basketball. And so Alabama NIL matches anybody that they want to match. Facilities, forget Coleman, they're building a brand new practice facility. So what Bruce did going to that Final Four instantly made Alabama go, okay, we need to go to the Final Four. It was like the moon race, and Auburn got there first, and Alabama says, we got to get there. And so, boom, they both start rising. Throw Tennessee into the conversation, and all three of those programs are the elite teams in the SEC now, and then everybody else is chasing. For a while, it was Kentucky and Florida for a brief period of time, Florida with Billy Donovan, but now it's Auburn, Alabama, Tennessee, and everyone else is trying to play and get into that three-pronged triangle there that those three teams hold at the top of the SEC. And ironically, last year, I think it was Tennessee was regular season champion. Auburn won the tournament. Alabama went to the Final Four. And it was those three teams. It was a crazy year when all three of the best programs right now in the SEC won something, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty crazy year.
This is a game that is still, or I guess it's less than a month away now. But we've been talking about this since we started doing this show, which was at the beginning of conference play. And it is the Auburn-Alabama games. One of them is in mid-February. The other one is the beginning of March, right before the SEC tournament. This is coming from an Auburn fan, but I kind of want to talk about both sides of it. Carter asked, will we take down the Bammers in their house? This is going to be, I think, one of the most heated rivalry games between Auburn and Alabama in basketball in a hot second because of how strong both teams are.
Do you want to go to the game that night?
Yeah, I think that we're probably planning on being there.
February 15th. It's probably the only time I've ever remembered a regular season basketball game by date. My gut feeling is I feel like it'll be a split, like Alabama wins in Tuscaloosa and Auburn wins in Auburn. If Auburn wins in Tuscaloosa, then a sweep is in order. It's going to be hard for me to imagine Alabama going in there and winning a basketball game. But anything's on the table with these two teams. We're talking about two of the top 8 teams in the country.
Top 5.
Yeah, well, top 5. I mean, Alabama lost, and there are 2 seeds. I'm giving a little wiggle room on the Alabama side. Auburn's the number 1 overall seed. Alabama was 2 on the Lunardi list. But there are metrics out there that they could play their way to both being 1 seeds by the time we get to the NCAA tournament, which would be insanity. I can't make a prediction on the game because they're both so good, and I think they can attack each other in ways that can really put the other ones at a deficit. Like, I don't think Alabama has Johni Broome, but for the first time, I thought Cliff Omori played really well against the bigs of Kentucky. Alabama's still not shooting the 3 well. When they do shoot the 3 well, they'll be able to beat anybody in the country.
Yep.
Grant Nelson has been a beast, but Johni's the best in the country. Chad Baker-Mazara is unguardable, and then Miles Kelly and Pettiford, and those guys have been shooting it really well. So, good luck making a point spread on that one. My gut says a split, but by the time we get to it, I'll be I'll sit back and I'll be entertained, like they say in the movies.
I agree with what you said in terms of, I think there's a better chance of Auburn beating Alabama in Tuscaloosa than there is of Alabama beating Auburn in Auburn. I think I just said that correctly. Just because of Auburn's defense. Alabama's defense has gotten a lot better if we're comparing it to last season. But I think that is the difference. Alabama can score points for days. And if their shots from deep start falling, good luck to whoever they're playing, because they will rack up points on you. But I think the difference that I see, or the leg up that I think Auburn has, is their defense right now.
Yeah.
When everyone's healthy.
Yeah. I would say this, that I would rank most likely scenario a split 1-1.
I agree.
My second scenario would be Auburn 2-0, and then Alabama 2-0.
I agree.
Would be in that order. Alabama would be my least likely outcome for a sweep. Auburn would be next up the ladder. Most likely outcome for me would be a split at 1-1.
I agree. Okay, to wrap things up, how many we discussed this at the very, very, very beginning of conference play, but I'm wondering if your mind has changed. How many games do you think how many losses do you think the regular season champion will have after we've seen some games play out? There are some teams that we could just go ahead and say, you are out of this race in Arkansas and Oklahoma who have lost all of their conference games I think, do I have that right?
Yeah, I think you do have that right. I would say this. Just last week, and you kept up with that graphic, Auburn's the only unbeaten team left. But just in the SEC last week,
Arkansas and South Carolina. I had to correct myself. Oklahoma has one loss, but those are the two 5-loss teams. Sorry, continue.
So, that's okay. So Auburn's the only unbeaten team left. But as I pointed out on top of your graphic, after you put that graphic out showing the highlighted Auburn logo still unbeaten, was the fact that just last week, only Auburn, Missouri, and Vanderbilt went undefeated in the week with 2 games. Yeah. So 16 teams and only 3 of them survived a week without losing a game. So
no one's safe.
No one is safe. But I would say that with the way Arkansas and Oklahoma are playing, I don't think either one of them have played Auburn yet. But the way South Carolina is playing, Auburn's already got a win over them. I'm going to say that Auburn, if they win the championship, Auburn could do it with 3 losses. I would go back to 15-3. 16-2 is now on the table. I didn't think that was possible. I really thought 14-4 would be the winner, but I think I'm inching up. Every time Auburn wins one, I inch up a little bit more from 14-4. 15-3 is now the number I think you need to get to win this thing. It's going to be hard for me to imagine Auburn losing more than 3 games down the stretch here.
Yeah, and I mean, the closer you get back to having a full, healthy roster, aka Johni Broome being back, who knows what'll happen. I do not think anyone expects them to exit conference play without a loss, but it's so top heavy. I mean, there are only 6 teams in the SEC that have either 0, 1, or 2 wins. Everyone else has either 3, 4, or 5 wins. So, I mean, it is top. The gap between, there's only a 2-game differential between Auburn and then Kentucky, Tennessee, Florida, Mississippi State, Vandy, Texas A&M all have 3 wins. Missouri, Alabama, Ole Miss only have 1 loss, have 4 conference wins. So it's the top half of the conference. I feel like it's going to be a tight race, probably down to the wire, unless teams start slipping.
Yeah, you guys only play Tennessee once and Auburn once, if I'm correct. I mean, Tennessee once and Kentucky once, if I'm correct about that.
Yeah, Tennessee at home and Kentucky on the road.
Yeah, so that's that helps your degree of difficulty. That's 2 of the best teams. You don't play them twice. Like, I think Alabama still gets Kentucky back home, and I think they play Tennessee twice. So not that Auburn, don't hear me wrong, Little T. I'm not saying Auburn's schedule is easy. I'm just saying it's different than Alabama's.
Kentucky comes to Tuscaloosa February 22nd, and then you only get Tennessee once at home.
Just once?
No, on the road, but yes, only once.
Okay. Well, that's different than years past, so take that little blessing there.
But yes, you do have to play Kentucky again.
Yeah, so the big win at Rupp helps a lot. If you can match that at home, then maybe Alabama can stay in the race. But I'm gonna say 15-3 in Auburn right now to answer your question.
Okay.
What about you? Do you have a feeling?
I don't know. I feel like it's so unpredictable. I mean, everyone heading into conference play, everyone was talking about how dominant, Tennessee, and then they go and get their butt kicked in Florida. I think they lose by 30. So then it's like, okay, Florida's not bad, but is Tennessee getting exposed?
Yeah, they lose at Vandy.
Then fast forward and they lose at Vandy. So it's you never know what's going to happen. And I tweeted it out after Vandy upset Tennessee, which is, I need to discuss the word upset before we go. I tweeted, like I said earlier, no one is safe in the SEC. So it's like, you have these games that you think the probability of losing this is probably pretty low. There are some games that make you nervous. The Georgia game for Auburn was one of those that I went into feeling, not as confident as I felt about previous games. But I'm probably along the same lines as you. I don't know. I'm not great at making predictions. And I think that the unpredictability of, if that's a word, of all of these games every night are, who knows what's going to end up. But that's what's making this season so entertaining.
Okay. You want to save the upset discussion for our next podcast? Because that could be a whole segment on what is an upset and what is not an upset.
Yeah. We can do it live too.
Okay, let's do that. We'll do that one live and discuss upset or not upset. What is an upset and not an upset? Because we have strong opinions about that, and so do you guys.
Yeah.
So do
you guys.
All right, that's the basketball show. Remember, like, subscribe, thumbs up, whatever it asks you to do, comment wherever you get this, wherever you're watching or listening to it. We do it again, the taped version ready for you on Friday morning, but live after every Alabama and Auburn game all year long. Little T and I will be here for you. Final thought as we go to the week, you think we're going to get snow or not snow?
I don't know. I feel like every time I see a tweet from James Spann, the forecast is changing. So I honestly don't even look at it. I'll probably look at it. When is it supposed to come on Tuesday? I'll probably look at it Monday night because I feel like it's changing so much.
It was flurries on Sunday, and
it was flurrying today. Yeah.
I was
Sunday morning.
Am I confused? Is it happening today? Should I be sleeping at the station? I don't know.
Yeah,
so
I don't know either.
Hopefully, we'll be able to get to Tuscaloosa together on Tuesday night and watch Vandy in Alabama and say hi to our buddy Steven Gonzalez over there. She's Taylor Korn. I'm Jim Dunaway, and that's the Basketball Show.